Forgot I was live fixing my shirt. Welcome to another edition of Power Lunch Podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Douglass Bussey. I've got a great guest for us today. You're going to really be inspired and motivated by his story. And I have no doubt that it's going to be a great conversation, helping you to understand how you can make the difference between performing at a high level in your business and making sure that you're healing and taking care of yourself the way you need to. That being said, Power Lunch Podcast starts right now. Welcome again to Power Lunch Podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Douglass Bussey. I'm excited to have you with us today. As always, we have great conversations with powerful entrepreneurs and leaders to help you understand how to power your life, power your business, and be able to create the freedom and impact that you want for yourself and for those that you love. As always, I want to remind you that we are sponsored by my book, Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within. It's available on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description down below. We're also sponsored by the 7-Figure Circle $1 Million Mastermind, my free Facebook group for all entrepreneurs who are building their business to 7 figures and beyond. We're well over 1,100, 1,200 members now. We've got incredible content, great trainings, free masterclasses. And as a matter of fact, on Thursday, March 16th, we're going to have a great podcast where we talk about how we can use video content to be able to expand your marketing online, social media, and understanding how you can use that. We're going to have a great masterclass collaborator, Mr. Juanpa Otalaro, who is going to help us. He's a video producer who helps entrepreneurs and leaders be able to create great content online that attracts their ideal clients and customers. With that being said, I want to make sure that you are following us here on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. If you have not, smash the like button. If you are not subscribed to a YouTube channel, I encourage you to go ahead and do that right now. There's a button down below. Click the bell to make sure that you're getting notifications every time we go live, every time we drop more amazing content to be able to support you in your journey going forward. And if you're in the comments, if you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube watching us live right now, drop a comment. Let us know where you're watching from, what you're discovering from this conversation. If you have a question, you want to drop it in live. Sometimes we'll try to see if we can fit those in as well. With that being said, I want to welcome in our guest for today. And I'm going to read his bio. Actually, I'm not going to do that because we've been a little stressed on time. We've had some things coming on. So I'm going to bring it in now. And I just want to welcome in our guest for today, Mr. Doug Gordon. And I will preface this by saying Doug and I have known each other for several years now. We actually met through the wonders of social media through Clubhouse, shared many great stages together. Doug has always, I've found him to be incredibly generous, incredibly warm, supportive, thoughtful, insightful, very wise, and I'm excited to have him here with us today. Doug, welcome to the Power Lunch Podcast.
Frederick, I think you just described yourself there. I don't know if you're talking about you or me, because but it's great to be here.
I get that mixed up sometimes. I don't know, maybe, but I appreciate it. Your words are kind. Doug, you're coming all the way from Dublin, Ireland. Am I correct? That's where you are right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm in Dublin. So pleasure.
Yes, and so you're on the other side of the pond, as we like to say. But tell those who are not familiar with you a little bit about yourself, what it is that you do and who it is that you help.
Sure. Thanks, Fred. And lovely to hear your great voice on this app as well as everything else, because we've spent so many hours on stage together, virtual stages, helping people in terms of entrepreneurs and business owners get their business to another level. So in terms of what I do, I was 21 years in the investment world, working as a fund manager, investment manager, and head of sales, C-level exec. And then in 2012, I had a near-death experience, then gradually pivoted out to become initially a healer, just to heal myself, then became a coach, and then speaking on stage, radio presenter, and gone from there. Now, international best-selling author as well. And yeah, helped a lot of people like yourself, did a bit of mental wellness work during the pandemic, about 1,000 or 2,000 hours, ended up winning a few awards, now 5 times award-winning speaker and coach as well. So I'm here to help people. I have 2 sides to me. I have a Buddhist side where I help people in terms of mental wellness. I'm also a master teacher healer of 5 modalities of healing. And on top of that, I work with people like Dell, Facebook, Salesforce, Leinster Rugby Club, and many others in terms of different businesses, in terms of C-level execs, helping them perform to the best with their communication skills, their sales skills, their leadership skills, and relationships building skills as well. So a bit of a mix, really.
I love it. I love it. We're going to dive into all of those things, but I love to start with the origin story of our guests, because the origin story tells a lot about who they are and how they got there. Tell us a little bit about where you were born and what it was like for you growing up.
Yeah, so I was born in Dublin, lived in Dublin for 8 years, then moved across to London, just southeast of London, kind of Surrey area, till I was about 14. Then moved across to Brussels, lived in Brussels and Belgium. Went to the British School of Brussels, which was a great place because you got to meet so many different diplomat and consulate sons and daughters from all over the world, and made some great friends there. Then went to university over in England. Went into the financial world. I studied engineering and did that for 4 years, including a master's degree, but then decided I'd go down the financial route instead. So went into fund management, worked for places like Fidelity, Lazard, HSBC, Aviva Investors, Columbia Threadneedle, and then Davy Asset Management as well. And growing up, I was all into competition. I was all into sport. I was all into ego. I was all into impressing my father. And, as a lot of us lads are when we're younger, dad is the super king, and we all want to make sure that we look good in front of him and all that kind of stuff. And my goals when I came out of university were all orientated about impressing him, become a millionaire, be recognized in the industry, do really well in sport, have a family similar to him, everything like that. Basically I copied my father. And then eventually I wasn't really following my true self. I succeeded in all those goals, but I wasn't really following my true self, my heart self. And the universe, or whatever you want to call it, woke me up with a big, big surprise with firstly 2 operations that went wrong, then 3 years of chronic pain, then the near-death experience, and then various other things, including marriage breakdowns and stuff like that, to help put me on the right path so that I had the right tools to be able to help the right people.
So let's pull on that thread a little bit, because you gave us a condensed version of your life. Here's your life, Doug Gordon. But I'm curious about this because, as you well know, right, there's so many things that are foundational to us in our childhood that form the path for our lives, the decisions that we make, the success that we have, or the lack thereof. First of all, are you an only child, or do you have siblings? What was your family?
I was the oldest of 3 brothers. So yeah, we had a great family, really, really kind parents, great family, very highly competitive father. And, he drove us in that way. And I became very highly competitive as well. So it was a good thing in a lot of ways. So, but yeah, look, like all kids, you want to impress your dad. And that was my aim when I was younger. My dad was my superhero. And, he worked so hard. I think a lot of us as kids, he was a really good father. But at times, even then, a lot of us as kids feel that we want more of them, more of them, more of them. And, he's just trying to provide for the family in the best possible way. And I think, as a kid, you always want every single possible time with your dad. And because of that, you try and impress him and get more of his attention. And I did that. And that went on. It was amazing how I ended up attracting similar type bosses and similar type partners as well, where I replayed the parent relationship again and again and again.
When you look at your father, because I have a son as well. I have 2 daughters, and my son is in the middle. And I think about this a lot when I'm, trying to model things for him. In terms of how you looked at your father, what was it that you admired so much about him that made you want to be like him?
Well, Dad's dad died when he was 2, and his mum died when he was 6. And he was shipped off to a really, really strict boarding school with no money whatsoever. And he built himself up from nothing to a multi-millionaire. So I figured, you know what, if this guy can do it with nothing, and I've had the grounding and the foundation that I have, I better do it as well. And that was what drove me. And that's, and the great thing was, he never, ever spoiled me. As the number 1 kid, he always made sure that I had, a little bit of pressing, a little bit of competition. If I got 70%, he might say, why didn't he get 75? If I got 80, he might say, why didn't he get 85? And that was to really push me to that another level. And it really did me well in terms of the competition, in terms of, doing well in sport and also doing well in business as well.
Do you feel that you had a natural competitive edge that your father tapped into, or do you feel like he kind of cultivated that for you?
I think a bit of a mix of both. I think, you are the DNA of your parents. You are, in terms of epigenetics, you're very like your parents. Let's face it. They always say that for the first 7 years of your life, you're basically programmed by your parents in terms of subconscious programming. And the first 3 years, there's only one-way traffic in terms of communication because you can hardly speak. So
Right.
obviously, I was very, very like him. I looked up to him, and there's a bit of my mom in me as well, but very much like my dad, I think, in lots of different ways.
So going into your college years, and certainly now you're more of an entrepreneur, right? But you had a whole career path that you followed for a long time, and that was the path you charted. Obviously, you mentioned because you emulated your father. But did you ever imagine yourself as being an entrepreneur? And the reason I ask that is because a lot of entrepreneurs are very competitive, right? They see themselves as being able to, if you're competitive, the point is to score the most points. And you can score more points when you're an entrepreneur than you can technically if you are in a career path, depending on where you go. But did you ever see yourself in that light? And how then, if you're looking back, do you see that things shifted for you?
Well, because my father obviously had no parents from the age of 6 onwards, he always worked for large institutions. And his last job, he was, president of Fidelity in the UK. So,
Mm.
and he obviously was in boarding schools as well. So it's kind of like that institutionalized type upbringing, if you know what I mean. And that's why the corporate environment really suited him. But he retired at 55 because he did so well. And because of that safety net that he always had in terms of a corporate, in terms of a salary, he kept it that way. And he pushed that on us as well. One brother became a doctor, another investment guy as well. But actually, it was the near-death experience that really changed me. And I was always quite, I set up my own soccer team when I was 14. I always was the captain of the hockey team, and I played field hockey to, kind of just below international level, playing the equivalent of, say, Barcelona or Man United in terms of soccer kind of thing, but in hockey. And so I was captaining people, I was leading people, but in terms of actual, entrepreneurship, probably not so much until I suddenly realized I wanted to follow my own path. I enjoyed the corporate world. I loved people. I love working with people. I love leading people and trying to coach people. But now I obviously do it in a very different way, and it's I love what I do now, and I think now it's aligned to here rather than here. Here was all about money, money, money. Do well, look good, get in the newspapers, all that kind of stuff. Now it's just about adding value to people. Now I just, I come from the heart space, a place of love, where I want to speak with love, act with love, and be with love. And, I always say love's an acronym for lots of vibrant energy. So I try and put as much as that in possible as well.
I like that. I like that. You mentioned the fact that you worked at a hedge fund for 21 plus years. You're managing lots of money, your teams and things like that. But obviously there is a difference in culture between what you do now and there. And you work with a lot of executive leaders, C-suite executives. Can you speak to a little bit, maybe even tell a story that illustrates that contrast, where you were at that period of time? If you're looking back, sometimes it's difficult to imagine ourselves as we are now back in the world, which can seem completely normal to us before. So is there a story or a time that you can think back to when, looking back on it now, you say, man, I was in this space and I was happy there?
Yeah, well, I tell you a great story, which will kind of add value, hopefully, as well, is when I was working I was head of sales and marketing of 2 big fund managers. And I was looking after like clients like JP Morgan, UBS, HSBC, some of the biggest banks in the world, dealing with their C-level kind of chief investment officers or their head of research or whatever. And it was big responsibility. Like I actually grew an asset management business from 50 million per annum sales to 1.75 billion per annum sales in 6 years. And during that time, I really enjoyed it. But it was the buzz of chasing the deal. It was transactional. It was basically bringing money from one organization or institution across to our organization and institution. So I didn't see really what was behind it in a positive, loving, energetic way. And actually, when I was head of sales of Davy, which is the biggest stockbroker in Ireland, I came back here actually because my father-in-law had cancer. So we moved back here to look after him. That's why I moved back to Davy rather than Columbia Threadneedle beforehand. And when I got back here, I had one guy say to me, because he knew I was into the inspirational stuff, and he said, Doug, I'm fed up. You know, I'm an IT guy and people complain at me all the time. I don't feel like I've got any purpose. And I said to him, I said, well, reframe what we do. Because actually, as an investment management house, we're helping that granny or grandpa retire younger, give more to their children, their grandchildren, buy a better retirement home. And when you have that thought pattern behind it, in terms of adding value to somebody rather than just transactions, it makes a massive difference. And I didn't see that in the past. I just saw everything I did as transactional, as money orientated, as building, you know, revenue for the company that I was working for. I didn't see that end granny or grandpa having a better life. And if you can almost switch into that in a meaningful way every single day and think, okay, what is it I do? Even if you're a janitor, how does it interlink to bettering someone's life in your organization? And if you can do that, it gives you a sense of springing out of bed every single day. Because most of us, or I certainly in the past, sometimes have to drag ourselves out of bed, drag ourselves into the office and look at the screen all day going, what the bleep are we doing here? But if you can get that sense of love for what you do, love for the people you work with, and love for the people you serve, then you have that lots of vibrant energy and you spring out of bed, if that makes sense.
One thing, and you're talking about this, and I'm going to pull on that thread about love a little bit later, but one thing that I noticed in working with entrepreneurs versus corporate types is there's a very different energy that people move with, right? Even when you're highly ambitious, high performer, etc., there's a different frame of thinking. As you're looking back in that, and you're talking about how people can serve others and lead with love and things of that nature, what are some of the drawbacks that you are trying to help people to work through in terms of corporate culture that needs to shift as you see it? Are there things that we need to be doing in terms of rethinking how we work in corporate culture and corporate spaces versus out in the freewheeling world of entrepreneurship, where there's a lot less, there's more risk, of course, to the individual, but there's a lot more freedom in people's minds in terms of how they move and how they engage themselves with the work that they're doing. So when it comes to the corporate space, particularly, I'm just curious, are there things that you see that we need to be shifting in terms of how we move in that regard?
100%. There's a few of them. And I think one of the old ways of leadership within corporates has been about motivation. It's about, you know, the stick with a carrot at the end of it in terms of a bonus or something like that. Or it's about beating people over the head in terms of fear to get them to do something. And that is motivating. And the word motive comes from a reason which is outside of you, whereas the word inspiration comes from the words in spirit, which means it comes from inside of you. Right. So if you can get people to move towards something in a sense of meaning, in other words, you put a mission in place of where you want the company to go and how it's bettering people's lives in some way or form, and make sure that you communicate to connect the hearts of the people that you're working with, so that you collaborate towards those collective goals and that collective mission, it makes it so much more. And the other thing I would say in terms of the corporate world is there's a massive, massive competition within the corporate world. It's all about ego quite often. It's all about trying to get that label of being, you know, you start as the executive, then you get to the manager, then you get to the director, then you get to the VP, the SVP, the president, you know. And I deal with these guys, you know, at the SVP, VP level. And there's one in particular, you know, a really good friend of mine now. And, you know, he went from VP down because of his, you know, he was getting to a certain age. And initially, he was really, really hit by it. It hit his ego. And I asked him, I said, you know, job-wise, are you still doing a similar job? Yes. I said, do you enjoy it still? Yes. Are you earning the same money? Yes. I said, well, what's the problem then? And I think the problem is what happens is people get wrapped up about these egos or these labels or these titles, which is just such a waste of time. And if you can always go back to that thinking of how am I adding value to people? How am I bettering people's lives? And also, I'd say when people go into the office, quite often what happens in a corporate environment is they go in, they get their work done, especially in the past, and then they get home as quickly as possible to their family.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, let's face it, we work for 8 to 10 hours, more even, a day. And you're working with these people. And I believe that you meet people for a grounded reason in terms of work, but also a spiritual reason in terms of they come into your life for a reason. And if you can, understand that and understand what's reflecting back, and when you see somebody and you think they're annoying you, maybe reflect back and ask yourself, what do I see in them that actually might be in me as well? Because quite often I find that you attract, like attracts like, your vibe attracts your tribe. So try and understand, why are these people in my life? There must be a reason. And can I learn from them as well and befriend them and realize that they're there for that reason and work together to collaborate rather than be in competition? Because where there's competition, there's a sense of lack going for the same thing. Where there's collaboration, you can create new things from nothing. So collaborate rather than be in competition.
You made a great point in telling that story about your friend, the SVP who went down. I find that a lot of people are caught up, their identity is caught up in the things they do or the title that they have, right? In terms of our ability to be able to reimagine ourselves through our work. And I'm just curious how you think about that in terms of who we really are and how we show up in the work that we do.
Yeah, this is a great question because as a corporate guy, it was 21 years all about what I did. And, I'll be going to dinner parties and people will be asking me what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the markets, any stock ideas, everything like that. And just to put it out there, that I obviously wasn't allowed to give anything because, you're not allowed to give financial advice, but people still asked you this over a beer, over a glass of wine, right? That was my identity. And, I loved it in some respects, in an ego perspective. But then suddenly I decided to go down this completely different route. And I felt like an imposter. Because suddenly I'm going into this place trying to do healing. I'm trying to do coaching. Obviously the coaching bit, because of being a leader and a manager, you're doing that anyway, but you're doing something completely different. Where I've worked with, Hollywood stars, I've worked with sports stars, I've worked with, people outside of the work environment suddenly. And initially I was kind of thinking, am I really good enough? And I think it's a bit like the bamboo tree where, you plant the seed, the bamboo seed starts to grow downwards. It puts all the groundwork and the roots in, and nothing looks like it's happening in terms of growth. And then suddenly you get to a certain point, maybe 4 years later, and it shoots up in the last 2 weeks, like 20 meters or whatever it is. And suddenly you blossom. And it took me, I reckon, to really feel confident in myself. It took me a good 4 years of showcasing to my own self that this is working. My coaching is working, my healing is working, my consulting is working, my speaking is being received well. And once I had that and felt worthy, then I suddenly, boom, it just went through the roof. I was able to finish the book. I'm getting, 5-figure speaking gigs all over the world. I'm speaking, in America, in LA, in Miami, in New York, with people like, Eckhart Tolle, Michael Beckwith, Marianne Williamson. This is all coming up now over the next year. And that was down to suddenly feeling worthy. And it's a bit like when that psychologist puts the plaque on the wall after he gets his degree or whatever. It's amazing that sometimes clients just come to him or her without even doing anything because you're in that vibration, you're in that energy, and you feel worthy to receive. And suddenly they come. And that's exactly, I'm literally getting so many clients coming now. I mean, the book obviously helps massively, but so many clients suddenly coming now based on that. And I think it's down to me and how I feel rather than anything else.
We've been kind of ping-ponging back and forth over the little transition point, right? There was a period of transition that happened to you that was quite unexpected. You had this high level of success. You built this life that you thought that you ideally wanted. And then something happened that transformed everything for you. Can you tell the story about the day that happened and how your life changed?
So it leads up a little bit, Frederick, because what happened was in 2008, I was working in the markets. You remember September, obviously, everything went through the floor. We had about 3.5 billion. We had 550 billion under management, but 3.5 billion, which is the most lucrative part, was all in the hedge funds. They just, every single bit went out the door. We never gated. We were like an ATM machine. Everybody went out. The performance was good, but It was just the way markets were. So, and we lost all the money as well. And we ended up having to let go a lot of staff. And, you know, when you're watching your friends carrying boxes out of the office, and obviously Lehman's happened at the same time when it went bust, it was horrible. And I didn't realize how empathetic I was towards other people's energies at the time. And I got really, really stressed. And that stress led to ailment after ailment, doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist, 2 operations that went wrong on my digestive system in 2009, end of. And then I literally was waking up sometimes 10 times a night, like I was being punched in the stomach with the most horrific pain for 3 years. Didn't know what was going on. Marriage broke down because of it, you know, lack of sleep, everything. I was horrible. And then in 2012, when I didn't think anything could get any worse, I ended up getting the norovirus, which was like a stomach bomb. And having had the digestive issues that I had before, with that, not a good thing. And literally after 10 days of serious dehydration, electrolytes down to pretty much 0, I was rushed to hospital in an ambulance, ECG said heart, blood pressure doubled, put in one of those tray things they move you along, rushed down to x-ray because they thought of blockage in the stomach. And on the way down to x-ray, suddenly the lights came on and I was encapsulating this amazing feeling of love, energy, connection. Nothing like I'd ever felt before. There was no man with a beard, but there's this living, conscious, loving energy that was surrounding me, connecting me, and almost like this knowingness coming to me. And it was basically saying, you need to change your life. You're not on the path. And I woke up, obviously I wouldn't be speaking to you here today. And at that point, then I started, I have to say, it was really weird because I still had the ego there and they still had to give me one more slap. And I went and did a spiritual course at the time because I didn't know what else to do. It was like a church course, went and did that. Still didn't feel it was quite right because I felt in that love energy that I was in when I died. I was kind of felt that, you know, that love energy would never alienate or discriminate against anybody in this world. So I felt like religions are all beautiful, but they're like rivers to the sea being universal energy, God, your own subconscious, whatever you believe in. And I said that to them. They said, look, well, maybe you need to reflect on what you want. So I came out, I said to the universe, I said, give me a sign. 2 days later, I'm running with my dog, full pace, went boom, over the dog tripped me up for no reason, cut my hand and my knee to shreds. And on my hand, I've still got, it's in the book actually, I've got photos and everything. I had INRI in terms of cuts in writing across my hand here, and 2 infinity signs either side, and another infinity sign on my knee. And it was obviously the INRI is Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, from the cross. So that was my sign as if to say, okay, go back and do that course. So I did the course first, got into that, but then still felt the rivers to the sea thing. So I learned about Judaism, Jainism, Islam, Buddhism, everything. Met the Dalai Lama, went to the Golden Temple over in India, did all this kind of stuff to try and understand the different perspectives of the same thing. And that's the biggest thing about this thing, Frederick, is that religions are all so similar. They're just different angles and perspectives of the same thing. Most wars we have on this planet, most arguments we have with other people in the office or at home are all just different perspectives on the same thing. If we could ask questions to understand rather than making assumptions and try and understand their way of communicating rather than just pushing our own, it might be a very different world that we live in.
So there's a lot to unpack there, right? You essentially had this health and you went through a healing process, transformative, but there's different phases to it still, right? There's the physical, which wakes you up, and then physically you get healed enough to be able to move forward. But now you feel like I've got to shift my life. And so in that moment, are you thinking, okay, great, I'm going to leave a hedge fund and become a coach? Did you have any idea or concept about what was actually happening in real time? Was there any anxiety about not being able to see the next step forward or the path? What did that feel like for you?
Well, it was flipping scary to begin with, I have to say. You know, when you're earning X, whatever, I'm not going to go into, amount of money, it was very lucrative. And suddenly you decide, okay, I want to change my path completely and start all over again. Just before 40. I mean, I have to say, bless her, my ex-wife, she was like, no wonder she left me. She was like, what are you doing? My parents were like, what are you doing? My brothers are like, what are you doing? And at times I said to myself, what am I doing? So look, initially I started doing the healing stuff. I have to say, to heal myself first, because I didn't just come out and suddenly was healed completely. It took a bit of time, and it took the understanding, because I had tried everything before that, in that 3 years previous to the near-death experience, to, the pain, everything to do with physical, alternative stuff, everything that you wouldn't believe. Some of the stuff, if you knew what I did, you'd go, why did you do that? But the pain was so much in the abdomen that I just tried everything. I won't go into it. But really, what I realized is most of it was caused from up here. Most ailments, I realize now, come from stress. And if you can work on your mind in terms of the mental side and the emotional side, it's amazing how the physical side changes. So that's when I started to get into the healing. I started to realize things. And what I've done now, because I've also got these 5 modalities of healing, which is, you know, the spiritual, energetic side, but I also became a certified mental wellness practitioner, a certified mindset coach, and everything like that as well, so that I had an all-encompassing, holistic viewpoint of how to help people. You know, and I also, having had the near-death experience, I've almost reframed trauma to help people in different ways, because I believe now, in my viewpoint, that why, if we're spiritual beings having this physical existence, why would you just come down as me or you? Why would you not come down to experience as the king, the queen, the prince, the pauper, the invalid, the Olympian, to experience life in different angles and different perspectives? So based on that premise, just maybe, and this is just my viewpoint, maybe we come down here to learn, to grow, to evolve, to become better versions of ourselves. So if anybody's listening to this and you're having a hard time, maybe you instead pat yourself on the back and go, you know what? Maybe I played this game of life so often that I'm testing myself like a PlayStation game to the ultimate, to see if I can still get through all this shit and come through it as the best version of myself. And when you reframe it like that, sometimes it can give you a bit of a sense of meaning. You can turn your mess into a message and give it meaning. And that's what I really started doing. And that really started to help me change the way I thought, the way I acted, and the way I spoke as well.
You know, I think we're seeing a real renaissance when it comes to spirituality in terms of how people see it, from the modern all the way back to the ancient, right? A lot of wisdom is resurfacing. People are re-examining it in terms of what it really means. But I'm sure that you have people that are skeptical when you start talking about this, the 5 modalities of healing and love energy and all these types of things. Like, people are like, what does that mean? You know, obviously, especially when we're very successful as individuals, you have people that have had a lot of material success. So to them, it's not practical thinking. You only measure success in terms of what you can see or how much you can acquire. How do you communicate to them in practical terms what it really means when you're talking about healing and dealing with trauma and learning to embrace love and developing yourself into the fullest version of yourself? I know those are multiple things. They're all different conversations that are intertwined, but deal with the skepticism that someone might feel and say, I just joined this podcast to hear how I can make more money or build my business. What is the connection between the spiritual and the emotional and the physical and the material?
Well, everything is energy, right? I always say thoughts are energy, speech is energy, thoughts lead to speech, speech leads to actions, actions leads to habits, and habits leads to destiny. So if you can get yourself in the best possible energetic state, if you optimize your energy, you're going to optimize your performance in your job, right? Let's face it, you know, if you wake up with loads of energy, you're going to get more done in less time with less stress. So just to give you an idea of how healing works, just as one start, you know, if you think about it, I'm speaking to you from my voice, it's going into the computer, it's going into the satellites, going across America where you are now. So there's energy coming out in a voice, in a sound wave. So that means there's energy all around us. Like, there's 8 billion people on this planet. There's 5 billion phones. There's a massive amount of energy all around us. There's some guy in Zimbabwe who's managed to produce some generator that actually produces electricity through the electromagnetic waves in the atmosphere. So anyway, my point being is that we all have this energy around us. And even in your own body, like, each individual cell isn't connected through glue, it's connected through energy. And there's a vibration through every single part. And that's been proved through quantum physics, right? So when you get into a state of unwellness, it's generally a state, like, let's face it, like if you're playing soccer, American football, rugby, whatever, and you get a whack on your knee and you can feel that pain. What is pain? It's the vibration in that area that's out of sync, out of vibration, that sends a signal up to the brain to tell you there's pain here. And when does it go away? When it goes back into sync, goes back into the normal energetic state. So what do I do as a healer? What does any healer do? All I do is I help bring energy into me through love and resync the vibration that's in that area that's out of sync back into sync. And it's amazing how powerful it can be if you do it. You can all do it yourself. But as it says in the Bible, where there's 2 or more in faith, God will be there. But even where focus goes, energy flows. and they've proven this time and time again, when there's a collective consciousness working together, even in an organization. If you can get people in your organization who believe and have faith in what you're doing, it's amazing how much more powerful that is to bring more clients on, to grow the business quicker, everything like that. So if you can get into that optimal state, so that's where I start with. Start with getting yourself into the optimal state so you can turn up as the best leader, as the best person. And, all business is made through relationships. And relationships, again, is an energetic connection between you and the other person. As we know, when you get a heart-to-heart connection with somebody, that can often be love. And that can be so positive to create the best possible outcome in terms of what you do as well. So that way, if you can get yourself, and they also say, obviously, your health is your wealth. If you can get yourself in the best possible state every single day, then it's amazing how much more you're going to get done as well.
Not Nev.
Yes, this is my youngest.
Hello! She's gorgeous.
People who watch the podcast, they've seen her plenty of times. Yes. You said something there about believing.
I am
faith.
4 years old.
Yes,
you know what? You are absolutely stunning. What's your name?
Elia.
Elia, my name is Doug. So nice to meet you.
Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi.
All right, how can I help you?
I'm figuring out how to put my book back together for mommy.
Okay. Well, can you ask Nev to help you for a few minutes and then I'll come?
Okay.
All right. Say bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah. She's gorgeous.
So, you were talking about believing, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are. When we talk about energy and belief and the need to have alignment, in my book, I talk about how energy is about resonance or resistance, right? And so we can see the difference even in the wave patterns when our minds are in resonance, right? When we're thinking peaceful, loving thoughts, gratitude, things of that nature, versus when we are in anxiety or we're creating other aspects of ourselves. But when you are struggling to believe, right? Can you talk about when people are out of alignment with their actions versus what they really believe? For instance, I'll give you an example. Let's say that there's someone who is, as you were talking about, having imposter syndrome. Maybe you're highly successful in your business and things seem like they're going well, but you don't really believe that you deserve it, that you're unworthy of it. Can you talk about what physically, emotionally, and spiritually is happening underneath the surface that causes people to be out of that alignment, and what that lack of alignment can actually can result in down the line?
Yeah, well, look, there's a lot of people, as you know, and I think we discussed this before on the app and everything like that, on Clubhouse, that there's a lot of people who fake it till they make it. And it sometimes works, but I find actually dealing with authentic people, you need to be authentic, and you need to be your authentic self. You need to be your best self. And people can feel that. People can understand that. And if you're, not being authentic, if you're not being truthful, it's amazing how, people can feel that as well. So, and the other thing I would say is, obviously, Frederick, your name is Frederick. And I always say, do you think your name is Frederick? Do you believe your name is Frederick? Or do you just know it? And you know it, right? So have a very clear vision of knowing where you want to go in life. And a good way of doing that is to write down, say, 5 things you love doing, 5 things you're good at doing in terms of skill sets, and 5 things you can add value to people in somewhere for. And that way you're on the right path. Or I'm speaking in front of 10,000 people over in the States in June. And if I was to give whoever's listening a platform to stand on, and, I would say to you, right, this is your 90-year-old self, your legacy speech. What would you be the most passionate about? What would you want to leave as your legacy? What could you really add value with? And when you know that topic, then work yourself back to where you are today, and then write down, okay, who do I need to collaborate with? What do I need to learn? What do I need to do to feel worthy enough to be on that stage? So it's all about getting an alignment to your heart self, to your true self, your true purpose in life. And if you can do that, it can massively help you on the way to have that self-confidence. Whereas if you're aligned to something that you're doing for money or to look good or for ego, you're not your authentic self. And you're going to feel more of that imposter syndrome. And I think also as well in business, quite often people think, right, like when I started doing gigs in terms of speaking, a lot of them I would do for free. And I would do for free to help people, but also to get the experience, to get the learning, and also showcase the wares. And once you've done that, and people go, fantastic. Like on LinkedIn, I think I've got 73 LinkedIn whatevers. And I think 35 of them all say, fantastic speaker, whatever. And once you have that and you see that yourself, and that's not just for the clients to see, it's for yourself to see, eventually, suddenly you start going, all right, okay, maybe I am doing something right. And then you feel more authentic. And that's why I think it's so important. The starting point, though, is making sure you're aligned to your heart rather than your head. Big stuff.
What I'm taking away from that is, sometimes you have to create the evidence to believe in, right? So if you can't find it, create it. And internally, you're able to generate externally what you need to validate what you don't feel internally. And I'm throwing that back at you to say, is that mumbo jumbo? Or is that essentially how it can work on a metaphysical, energetic level as well?
Oh, 100%. It works massively. It's amazing how when you get into the energy of something, when you really truly get into the energy of something, it's amazing how you pull more of it into yourself as well. So if you have that self-confidence as a good coach, a good speaker, a good author or something like that, it's amazing how you bring more of it to you. I'll give you an example. I was the main keynote speaker of the Institute of Directors Global Convention on Sustainability and Climate Change. And it was actually mainly with the branch of the Indian branch. And I targeted them on purpose because there's 1.5 billion people over in India. So it was great to make friends with them. And anyway, on stage with a bunch of lovely Indian guys, some of them like lords, ladies, the former Secretary of State of India was there, everything like this. Anyway, and we were all talking about climate change. And I got out of there. And I was thinking about my daughter at the time. I hadn't seen her in a while. I wanted her to reach out. Left the place, got on a plane to come back to Dublin, sat next to a guy. He had a daughter, 1-year-old daughter on his thing. She kept reaching out to me. So I got the daughter reaching out to me thing. He was the #1 European consultant in terms of sustainability and climate change. And on the other side of him was his wife, who was Indian. So when you put yourself into the energy of what you want, it's amazing how you attract more of it. So if you get into that confidence of you being a good coach, you being a good consultant, you being good at whatever you do out there, it's amazing how you get into what you say, that resonance, and you bring more of it into you as well. It's amazing.
When you're thinking about the work that you do now versus what you used to do, and then you encounter people, what is the thing that you can see that people seem to be struggling with the most? I know that we've come through a pandemic. We've come through some tremendous economic upheaval throughout the world because of that event. But also it feels like people are energetically, spiritually, physically, they're at a conflict with themselves and with other people. What is if there's a common thread that you're starting to see in the work that you're doing with people, what would you say that it is? And where do you feel that we need to be able to start pivoting in terms of our thinking and moving in the world?
Yeah. So #1, in terms of there's one in business, and then there's one in the more holistic side of things. So I'll talk about the holistic side of things. And mental, let's face it, we had the pandemic, but actually the biggest pandemic over the last few years has been a mental health problem. And there's so many people, let's face it, at the moment, that, with phones, with iPads, with computers, children, adults, whatever, they're getting flick, 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 flick. Attention, 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 attention. 100 different thoughts buzzing around, energy all buzzing around you as well. Now, how on earth are we able to cope and be in the present moment and center ourselves to become creative rather than just reaction, reaction, reaction? And I think people are getting too much into what I call their masculine energy of action, 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 rather than forgetting that all of us, including men, have that divine masculine and divine feminine. The divine feminine side is creativity, it's connection, it's compassion, everything like that. And having a balance of both of them within us makes us, I believe, the perfect human being. But most people at the moment, including some women, I have to say, are very much in their masculine. Action, 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 action. Next thing, next thing, next thing, react, react, react. And I know a lot of teenagers, a lot of them, that have been struggling with this kind of thing, in terms of mental health, whatever it might be. And also adults as well. So I think that's something that really need to work on. And I help people in terms of that, in terms of helping them get back into that centered state, helping them get rid of those energies, emotions that are stuck within, either from childhood trauma or something like that, in terms of something that's happened to them, to be able to release that. So that's on that side. On the business side, there's been too much competition in the past. You know, we have Gen Zs now and millennials who are looking for a sense of purpose and meaning in terms of what they do. So in order to create loyalty within your businesses, you need to make sure there's a real sense of purpose, a real sense of meaning, something that actually adds value to the world. And what I found when I worked in the businesses that I worked in, you know, we got this mission statement when we walked in the door on the first day with the HR department, and we never even knew about it until maybe the annual conference when they suddenly said, oh, by the way, do you know our mission statement is this? And we need to be reminding our staff again and again and again, this is our mission statement. This is what we try and do. And by the way, we've now doing a bit of sustainability and climate change and, you know, carbon, you know, zero carbon printing and everything like that as well. So you feel a sense of meaning in terms of what you're doing. And I think that needs to be very conscious, because I believe this earth that we live in is our playground to play in. And we need to, you know, really take care of it. And in order to take care of it, it starts with you, because if you can't take care of your own self, how can you take care of another person? And how can you take care of this beautiful planet that we live on as well? So that for me is key and paramount at this point in time.
There's two different directions I want to go in on that. First, on the business side, and I want to tie this back to the alignment that we talked about, right? And you just mentioned mission statement, people not even in the company, not even being aware of what that is. Where is the misalignment happening? Because we write these amazing mission statements, these glowing purpose statements, and yet and still that doesn't seem to be what we're really about. If you ask the people in the organization who work there, the employees, the teams, right, there seems to be a disconnect between what we say we do or what we say we're about and the way that we actually do that. You've had years of experience in the corporate space and now outside of it. Now being able to look back in, where do you see that misalignment, and how do leaders fix that so that they can actually be about what they say they are about?
Well, that comes down to, I think, largely authenticity, largely trust, and largely working as a team rather than from your own self. I mean, most good leaders are very good people. I work with a super guy, I remember him, and he would treat the janitor in the same way as he was the CEO, as the chairman. Every single person was important, and he made you feel that way. And I think we need to remember that. And I think what I see with a lot of C-level execs that I work with, they're, you know, at the end of the day, they're trying to look after their family. They're trying to look after themselves. They're just trying to earn a buck. And the biggest thing is that a lot of them aren't really aligned to the business in terms of a real sense of purpose. And I think, you know, in order to do that, they need to truly, truly get aligned to the business, truly understand what the mission is of the company, and truly understand their staff as well, and take time to get to know their teams, not just on a superficial basis, but on a real in-depth basis. As I said earlier on, I truly believe that you and I meet for a reason in terms of business, in terms of what we're doing now, but also spiritual, energetic reason as well. So look at everybody on this planet as your brother or sister, and look at everybody on this planet as all interconnected. As I said earlier on, you know, we come down, I believe, as the king, the queen, the prince, pauper, and all that kind of stuff. So I believe that we come down as black, white, Chinese, Indian, whatever, to experience all the different lives. So treat everybody as you want to be treated, and work as a team, and see everybody as part of your own family, and see whatever entity in terms of organization that you're working with as a way of facilitating some kind of meaningful impact to help this planet and help humanity, making lives easier in some way or form by creating some kind of service that you're providing to people. And that changes in terms of trust, in terms of authenticity, and how people can read you and work with you as well.
When it comes to being the best version of yourself, there's some practical things that we can do, right? And practically speaking, that can be simply starting your day off right. So a lot of people swear by morning routines. Some people say, it's hogwash. Where do you fall in that side of it? And if you have a morning routine, what do you prescribe to people as the template, if you will, for starting your day, launching your day, and being as productive and as powerful and impactful as you can be?
Yeah, so I have a big morning routine in my book. It's called the Millionaire Morning Routine. And look, the one thing I would say is, I always say that the basics are GEM. And my GEM is GEM. So gratitude, exercise, meditation. And gratitude, obviously, I always say, look, you and I have children, right? And you give a child a present, the child isn't grateful, you don't feel like giving them anything else. So why would the universe or even your own subconscious make you feel worthy to receive anything else if you're not grateful for what you already have? Also, your vibe is your tribe, but also your vibe attracts the type of experiences you have. So if you get into the attitude of gratitude, it's amazing how more things come in positive ways. That's the first thing. So I always try and write down a few things I'm grateful for. I just lie in bed before I even get out of bed and think, I'm grateful for my children, I'm grateful for my partner, I'm grateful for the house, I'm grateful for everything in life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's the first thing. And then write down all the things you need to do during the day in terms of the tasks, and then sit there and visualize them in a state of meditation. The other thing I always do is I always try and put my hand on my heart and say, I am Doug Gordon, I am my heart. Please let me connect the hearts of the people that I meet in order to bless rather than press. And what I'm trying to do there is try and get myself out of my head self into my heart self. So I have that energy about me when I meet all the people. And I do that when I'm going on stage as well, actually, as well. So that's the other thing. The other thing, simple things, make sure you drink at least, a pint of water in the morning to get the body hydrated. Make your bed, because if you've done one thing in terms of making your bed in the day, then you're hopefully going to complete all the other tasks. As I said, exercise. When I'm brushing my teeth, I always look myself in the mirror and go, I am feeling fantastic. I'm going to have a fantastic day. And affirmations, obviously, the more affirmations you say, it's the more seeding the subconscious to create neuroplasticity and create new ways of thinking, acting, and speaking. So if you go around and say to yourself, I am feeling fantastic, I'm feeling fantastic, even if you don't, it's amazing how you suddenly feel fantastic as well. So affirmations is something I do very much. I normally have a cold shower every day as well. Not for the whole time, because I must admit, I get in the shower and shave and wash my hair, and then I stick it on cold, normally for a couple of minutes. And normally, quite often, I say my affirmations there, because then you can say them with a lot more energy and motion, because you're freezing your butt off in the shower. But obviously that helps in terms of the vagus nerve, in terms of getting the energy going, getting the endorphins going, getting you set up for the day as well. If you have time, if it's a Saturday or Sunday, quite often what I'll do is I might do a bit of journaling. So I might then do some different type of meditation where I connect to my soul self, higher self, heart self, whatever you want to call it. And then I'll just maybe think of a question, and I'll just start journaling, writing down, okay, I might think, how can I add value to Frederick today? And I'll just start writing things down without even thinking. And things might just come to you. And don't even think about it. Just write. And try and write 2 or 3 pages. And it's amazing sometimes the inspiration that comes out as well. So there's a few things. Obviously, eat well, organically, sleep well as well. So you're making sure you wake up with energy. But they're just the kind of basics that I try and do most mornings. Always do the gratitude. I always do the cold shower. I always do the exercise. I always do the affirmations. And I always do even a small meditation, even if it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes. You've got time. And it's amazing if you have the energetic intention of visualizing the tasks and visualizing them in a state of celebration, how it's amazing how things just happen in that way as well.
I want to curious about that, because I think it's fantastic. I think you've given a very thorough blueprint for how to get yourself going throughout the day. But for a lot of people, they try to install a morning routine and they can't stick to it. It'll maybe it takes for a couple of days and then they forget something, or life happens and they fall out of it. And so although they try, they're not able to really adequately maintain it long enough for it to be able to take effect. And they can get discouraged. So how did you go about installing your routine? Did you install it whole, as in all the pieces, or did you do it brick by brick over time? What did that look like for you? And how were you able to now have this morning routine that you've been able to practically practice over the last years?
Well, we're all perfectly imperfect. And I always say, don't beat yourself up if you don't get it all done, but just try and have the conscious intention of at least doing 3 or 4 things every day. I mean, literally, you could go into the shower, have a cold shower, do your affirmations, do your gratitude in the shower, do your kind of almost thinking about what you've got to do during the day in a kind of like a slight meditative state in the shower. I used to do quite a lot of that. Sorry, one thing I left out as well is I do a lot of grounding stuff, because I believe, there's so much energy going around us all the time, and I'm quite intuitively psychic that you can pick up on other people's energy. So if you're very grounded, it helps you stay in the moment, but it also helps you stay in your own energy rather than picking up on other people's energies as well. So by doing that in the shower, it can be very powerful. But quite often, I'll go downstairs, maybe walk outside onto the grass, feel the grass underneath. But I don't beat myself up if I don't do it all. I just have an intention of trying to do something every day. And if I forget something first thing in the morning, maybe I might pick it up later on. Maybe I've done things where I've gone out, had to rush out the door to a meeting, but then I've got 5 minutes between meetings. I'm in the park, take my shoes off for a bit, do a bit of grounding, quick meditation, and I've got it done as well. Or, you can't get your exercise done in the morning, so you might do it just before lunchtime. Whatever, it's having the intention there, having the program in place, and trying to stick to it as much as possible, but know that we're all busy at times, know that we're all perfectly imperfect, and don't beat yourself up about it, but try and stick to it as much as possible. And I would say I probably do at least 75% of it every single day in some way or form. And by the end of the day, I normally have done all of it by going to bedtime, but it isn't all done because sometimes there's rushing, there's, you've got kids, you've got another partner, whatever it might be, and there's things that get in the way. But just, be present in the moment and try and get as much done as you can.
You referenced several times the book. You have a new book that's out now, Charging Yourself Up for Success. It's been very well received. And now you're taking it all over the world, literally, speaking to people about some of the concepts and things that are in there. Talk to us a little bit about the book. Why did you write it? And for those who read it, what are they going to get out of it?
Yeah, so I wrote the book because I had the near-death experience, and I felt I had something that was slightly different that might be able to help people. We all, like anybody who's thinking about a book out there and think, oh, Frederick's done it, Doug's done it, oh, I don't know. We all have our own unique experiences. We all have different perspectives, different angles. Share it with the world. It's a beautiful thing, and have the confidence to do that. So why did I write the book? I felt I had something to share with the world. I felt I could help a few people. I felt it would be right to turn my mess into a message and give it meaning to help other people in some way or form. And I actually, at the time, I wasn't particularly good. When I was a student, English was not my forte. But I have to say, the radio show, which I've been doing for 5 years now, in terms of putting people out there, promoting people, writing a little bio for them at the start, putting out on social media, really helped in terms of improving my writing skills and my creativity skills. And I wrote the book, obviously, to help people. That was generally it. It's part to do with business. It's part to do with life. It's part to do with relationships, because we're all doing that. We all work. We all have relationships with everybody, including your own self. So the book is about initially finding your sense of purpose, how to create purpose, find purpose. Then it goes on about there's a system in place where we all have triggers, traumas, parental programs, kind of those things that kind of hinder us, keep us back, keep the fear in place. So there's a system in place to help you release all those in there in order to be able to help you focus on what you want rather than what you don't want, and also to help you get into a higher energetic state. There's a system in place in terms of getting your energy up to the highest level. There's a system in place in terms of how to goal set in the kind of the manifesting secret way, but also in a grounded way as well. And there's a massive amount of stories in there in terms of I've interviewed like some amazing people on my radio show, like John DeMartini, Lisa Nichols from The Secret Film, Jack Canfield from The Secret Film, Les Brown, amazing, Sharon Lecter, Stephen Kotler, who's in the Mind Valley stuff, and many others as well. And during that time period, I've basically utilized a lot of what I talk about, a lot of those guys in there as well. What have I learned from them? What was successful that they utilized as well? So encapsulating a little bit of my own life, but a lot about my radio guests, some of the most successful people in the world, I put it all into one kind of chocolate box, as we say, so that you can pick from it. And I've had, quite a lot of people read it already. And I've got testimonies from John DeMartini, from Lisa Nichols, from Stephen Covey, from Tasia Valenza, who's in Star Wars and Star Trek and is an Emmy Award-winning actress, and many others as well. And what they've said is it's like, I suppose, the secret book / maybe Wayne Dyer's Power of Attention seems to be the feedback that's coming back to me. And I got amazing testimony, thank God, from a critic who critiques books, and he's been in the book industry. He used to have a magazine critiquing books, and he was the managing editor, and now he's been doing it for 33 years, and he critiqued the book, and you can see it on Amazon, which is fantastic. So it went international bestseller in 4 different categories. It's going out now in a mailing across the entire Institute of Directors in India, which is 500,000 people. It's going in another mailing across the entire Global Goodwill Ambassadors of the world, which is 400,000 people. And there is a publisher over in China where it's very hard to get into China, but I have a contact there, and the book will be going out there as well. So I targeted areas of the world like India and China, where there's 1.5 billion in each of them or more, which is like a third of the world, because I want to touch hearts and I want to utilize the profits to build a healing center and help more people with mental health.
There's a couple of things I want to ask you right before we get ready to wrap up. And that's just, just actually more from a practical standpoint for myself, even. And I know there are people here who maybe they want to be a speaker or they are speakers and they're thinking, how can I expand this? Right now you're speaking all over the world and your book is impacting people across multiple continents. So that's amazing. If you were to give one practical tip to someone around speaking and around the book itself, how to get your book more widely distributed, more widely known, what would you give as practical advice?
Yeah, so obviously come up with something that you're really passionate about, because then when you talk about it, you're just going to have that energy behind it and people are going to be drawn towards you, and really come from that place. Whether it's something that you've gone through that you can then help people through as well, whether it's an experience, a skill set that you're really good at that you can help, whatever it might be. It might be a relationship breakdown. It might be being really good in a marriage. It might be being a good parent, whatever it is. There's so many different things that you all have skill sets out there to do. So make sure you find your passion is the first thing as well. And then when marketing it, your network is your net worth. So try and connect with as many people as possible. Try and get on any stage. You and I have been on Clubhouse. We've met so many different people in Clubhouse. That's been fantastic. I've been on stage and real stages because of Clubhouse. But also, if you're in your area, have a look on Eventbrite and have a look at different events that might be coming up in 6 months, 9 months, a year. Contact the organizers, offer your services for free, get on that stage, talk with passion, act with passion, connect with people's hearts. And then you'll find that you'll build your network up. People will trust you, they'll like you, and then they'll want to hear more about you. And that way you got that book. And just a few little tips that really work for me in terms of, you can do as well as LinkedIn, obviously, is the most authentic platform, I think, in social media. One of the things you can do is, you can put the posts up, but there's polls. And quite often I've been doing these polls saying, what is the most important thing to you? Is it mindset? Is it passion? Is it getting most energy? Whatever it might be. And then put at the top, by the way, this is all in my book. So then you get the algorithms open up to that. You can also set up articles and newsletters on LinkedIn, which actually goes to people's actual inbox as well. So you could set up, charge yourself up for success one. And then people then will get that in their inbox as well. So, and then there's other things in terms of, one thing I did, which was quite sly, was I changed my job title to a new organization called Charge Yourself Up for Success, author. So suddenly that goes out to your entire, I've got 24,000, entire, network saying, Doug's now got a new job, congratulate him on his new job. And the new job is, please buy the book. It's called Charge Yourself Up for Success. So just utilize these kind of things, but just remember, most of all, it comes about passion. I think also I have a publisher which helps because it means you get a buyback guarantee with all the different Barnes and Nobles, Waterstones, and everything like that as well. So that helps in terms of getting into the actual shops as well. But there's just a few things that might help.
That's great advice. That's great advice, Doug. As we're getting ready to wrap up, where can people find out more about you, connect with you, if they want to get you to come and speak, if they want to learn more about your trainings, workshops, or they just want to pick up the book, or all of the above? Where can they connect with you?
So I've got two websites. The main one is dougdgordon.com, or even better is training.dougdgordon, that's GORDON.com. And you can pick, I've got online courses. I've obviously got the book, which is on Amazon everywhere in the world. You can get either the e-copy or the paperback. And actually, very soon, the audiobook's going to be coming out as well. The publisher's, putting one thing after the other. And and then contact me on LinkedIn, on Facebook. Instagram is actually the best in one way because my Facebook is full up, so I don't take any more friends in there. But I will, obviously, on Instagram, connect with you there. I share all the same content on all the same platforms. But LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram will be my key ones.
Awesome. Doug, it's been a pleasure having you. I really appreciate you coming to share your story with the audience, letting people know how you have made this transition in your life and continue to make a greater contribution to the world, to humanity, spreading the energy of love and healing around the world. So I want to extend my gratitude to you for being here with us today.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Fred.
Absolutely. Thanks to all of you who have joined, watched for a second, a minute, or longer. Especially thanks to Martina, who is a regular watcher and a guest who likes to document and take notes in the comments. So if you are strolling down, you can actually see some of the key points that Doug has shared with us here today in the comments as well. For those of you who are watching wherever you are, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, follow the channel on YouTube, subscribe as well, and let us know what you're discovering from this conversation that's been valuable for you. I encourage you to go pick up a copy of Doug's book and follow him on Instagram as well to connect with him as well. As always, my name is Frederick Douglass Bussey, and this has been another edition of the Power Lunch podcast. Ever forward.